we speak to the Executive Director of Migration Watch, Dr. Mike Jones. Mike, thank you for joining us. I'm interested to know what your organisation makes of the current drafting of this Rwanda bill. Do you think it goes far enough?
Well, there are aspects of the bill that are quite positive. I mean, it disapplies sections 2, 3 and 6 of the Human Rights Act. And obviously the Human Rights Act embeds the Convention of Human Rights, which makes it very difficult for the Home Office to deport people who have arrived illegally. So I think that's really positive. There are positive sections on the prevention of interim injunctions. But as you know, Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick point out, Clause 4 is the weakness, because that allows for individual appeals. That could create a logjam in the system. You could have a high attrition rate of appeals. And, as Jenrick points out, this could lead to a merry-go-round of legal challenges.
But Mike, other people have pointed out that if the government were to strengthen that section of the bill, it could, well, a real possibility that Rwanda then pulls out.
I'm not convinced of that. Rwanda had a very similar outsourcing policy with the State of Israel, although the details of that didn't fully come to public. So I'm not entirely convinced of this.
Looking into Section 4, as you rightly mentioned, the so-called loophole. The really relevant section, Section 4.1b, to get incredibly technical, where it talks about courts and tribunals reviewing, the wording is that this could be brought about based on compelling evidence relating specifically to the person's particular individual circumstances rather than the grounds that Rwanda is unsafe. Does that not seem like pretty tight language? No one could be refused by saying Rwanda itself is unsafe. They can't talk about the record of the Rwandan government or all of the talking points that lots of people bring up. It has to be something specific and compelling about someone individually, i.e. some sort of debilitating disease.
Yes, the wording is robust. But what works in theory doesn't necessarily work in practice. And, Professor Richard Eakins of Policy Exchange has also made this point. Rishi Sunak claims that the bar is set very high, but in practice, judges and lawyers could actually lower the bar.
What would your ideal policy be to stop the boats?
I think it's a bit too late in the day now. This is last chance saloon, but if I could go back in time, I would encourage the government to have negotiated a returns policy with the European Union during the Brexit negotiations, which didn't happen. Obviously, I think Parliament needs to look at the Human Rights Act, either to amend or abolish it, particularly the principle of non-refoulement, which I think is outdated. But again, this is all irrelevant to where we are now.
But isn't it also the point that if we were to sign some sort of returns agreement with the European Union, they would never do a returns agreement that was only one way? And one of the big problems being faced by countries, not just the United Kingdom, but countries right around the world right now, is that the number of people moving is simply skyrocketing. And all European countries are seeing a huge influx of legal and illegal migration. And by some assessment, if we had some sort of pooled obligation with the European Union, which would no doubt be asked for in returns for a returns agreement, we might have to accept even more migrants as a result of that.
Well, I would never advocate that type of returns policy. That's more in line with what the Labour Party believe in. And indeed, that's what happened under the Dublin Convention, where we actually received more people than who we sent back. An ideal returns policy is having joint boat patrols, joint operations with France. And if somebody attempts to cross the channel, they're intercepted. If they somehow manage to arrive, then obviously they should be sent back. But again, that's not going to happen. Post-Brexit, the EU has ruled out a returns policy with the UK because they need to get their own house in order.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for your time, Dr. Mike Jones, who is the Director of Migration Watch. I asked Tom about, what would the ideal policy look like for you, because this is what we've got. And I know it's hypothetical, but it's very easy to criticise, what's in front of you.
Yes.
But I do struggle sometimes because it doesn't seem to me that anyone has a perfect solution. People talk about turning the boats back, but hang on, that's hardly going to get through the courts, is it?
Well, and this is the uncomfortable situation that we as a nation face. 100 years ago, Britain ruled the waves. Britain was an unambiguous superpower. Indeed, Pax Britannica lasted from 1815 until perhaps between the First and Second World War. We're not the sole global superpower anymore. We're a global power, we're an important power, but we are less powerful than the United States or China. And in that sense, we can't just pick up people and dump them in another state. We have to have the agreement of that state to do so. So we can't just turn back the boats and dump them on France without France agreeing to that. And it doesn't seem that they're doing it. So you get this bind that the government's been in since this boat problem started in around 2018.
Yeah, and we get fixated on the small things, and it's understandably why. But the accommodation or particulars around various issues like that. But it's a conundrum. Let's hope one government might be able to solve it.